Roll call. I'm present. Ms. Martin's present. Mr. Pennings is here. Mr. Beaver. Ms. Powers is not here yet. Ms. Morency. And the record can also show that Ms. Kinzer, Mr. Moore, Mr. Atkinson, Mr. Bates, and Mr. Dudley are also all present. Our first item is to adopt the agenda, and we do have one thing that we need to delete from the agenda, and that is the 4B, the use of electronic devices. Mr. Hubner had mentioned that at one of our previous board meetings, but at this time he doesn't have a proposed policy and wanted a little bit more time to work on that, so he had asked that that be removed. Do we have a motion to approve this agenda with that deletion? Motion from Ms. Martin and a second from Mr. Beaver. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, that agenda is adopted. Everyone should also have a copy of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, any adjustments that need to be made to those? There are none. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion from Mr. Pennings, second. Ms. Morency, saw her hand first. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, those minutes are approved as well. Our next item, moving right along, is policy 3.216. And that is the naming of the new facilities. To give everyone a little bit of an update on that, the subcommittee, which was Mr. Pennings, Mr. Moore, Mr. Beaver, and Dr. Marzak, we all met on Tuesday after the retreat to discuss this particular policy, just in light of what we know to be coming down the pipe as far as, I know the Spring Hill Elementary renaming is potentially going to be presented to us soon. Our policy currently doesn't address renaming. It only addresses naming of new schools, so it's a little vague what exactly they need to be doing. And in light of that, we were trying to work on firming that policy up. If you remember at the last board meeting, we also had the presentation from Principal White regarding the renaming of the computer lab at Central High School. So we feel like it's likely that we'll have other schools that are going to want to potentially rename various parts of their school. And again, I think we felt like after discussing it that there may be some gaps in our policy. We met to discuss some potential policies. Mr. Moore, I know, had done some research on it. I'd done some research. There's a lot of different ways that it can be approached. We had a draft policy from TSBA that was presented that, to be honest, I don't think we felt fully met the needs at this point. So we're still kind of in discussion mode from that subcommittee meeting. However, as a part of that discussion, we decided that we would send it back to TSBA and see if they could give us some further guidance. And one of the questions that came up was what to do with the existing policy based on the issues that we were having as far as the renaming and not having a clear policy in place. And after discussion with Ben Torres and also with our legal counsel, it was recommended that we consider essentially suspending that policy so that we can work on developing a policy as a board, if that's something that we want to do. Otherwise, the policy that we have will remain in effect. Mr. Moore.
I just wanted to echo some of that. I mean, I know we had, I don't know, Mr. Beaver, I know, and Mr. Pennings, we had talked about this some as well. The more I looked into this, the more complex the process got, and when it came to naming rooms, naming buildings, renaming rooms, what process is used for that, it really was a far bigger issue than I think I even realized when I started looking at it. And our policy, I think if anybody's looked at it, it's very brief, does not, actually it only covers naming, doesn't cover renaming. And really, I think in that, I would agree with what was recommended from the TSBA legal representation as well as ours, that looking at on a temporary suspension of our current policy, just so that we can get a handle on this before we have to kind of make decisions on the fly, which is what I would rather avoid. I would rather have some good policy in place where we don't have to just wing it every single time when this comes up. And I'm afraid within a short time period, we're going to have a lot of these issues come up kind of back to back. So that would be, I would like to see us move in the direction that was recommended from TSBA, which was to suspend that policy until we get it worked on. And we are going to continue to work on that.
Mr. Dudley?
Could we also suspend any naming of anything new or renaming? That way all the constituents know until we come up with a clear and well-defined policy that we're not going to change names of anything else.
I think that is the intent, is to, although our policy right now only covers naming, that policy that dealt with naming is what was being used as a basis for the renaming committee that had been formed as well, just because there was nothing in place. So I know that's what the director had been using as kind of his guide for the possible renaming in Spring Hill Elementary. And again, it's not that we don't want to consider that, it's just we want to make sure that there's a process in place so that going forward.
But what I'm getting at, I think some in the community would think that we just dropped the policy. Well, I'm saying that we not only suspend the policy, but we're suspending any further renaming until we come up with a clear and well-defined policy.
Yes, I think that is the intention. And let me say too, that based on what Jake has told us, we can make the recommendation out of committee, and it would be on the November board meeting as a recommendation from the committee, but it will require a 2/3 vote of the entire board in order to suspend any of our policies. Ms. Morency?
Do we have a time frame on how quickly we can get this new policy established? Because I think if we had that and we went to them and said, you know, we're really working on this, and it won't look like we're just doing it because we don't want to change the name of the school.
Mr. Moore?
That's actually a good point on that. I guess two things. I'm thinking more, again, I think bigger, the fact that we're probably going to be building some new schools here pretty soon, because that's kind of where I'm looking at is another big piece of this, actually a bigger piece, that over the next few years I expect that we would be building several schools. So this is going to be a kind of something it's going to come up every year for the next few years. But on top of that, I would be reluctant to set a time limit on it. I want to make sure we get it right. And I wouldn't want us to rush a product. If we say we needed to have this done, you know, by January, I would just hate to rush and not have it really done. Because again, as I looked into this personally, as I've done trying to put together some documents that represent different ways to address the different issues, it is way more complex than I even imagined at first. And as I told at the subcommittee meeting we had the other night, this could easily, if you wanted it to be a 30-page policy on just this issue. It really could be, and I don't want it to be. So I would rather us put some good time and effort into it. I would just be reluctant to set a date where we would limit and kind of have to put out a bad product.
Ms. Martin?
Whatever we do decide to do, I would hope that maybe from the committee or from the board or somebody that represents us, that we could communicate, I know, to, let's say the Copley family, to Stephanie's, the Cantrell family, because I know that they specifically had started the process with the information that they were given. So to, you know, not allow them to think that their efforts were in vain. They did what they thought they were supposed to be doing, and they were following what they were on track. So, and I know I said specifically about the family, how I'm definitely on board for doing something like that. So if we could communicate with them specifically, I'd appreciate it personally.
Mr. Pennings?
I'd like to make a motion that we suspend all naming or renaming of school property until further notice.
All
I
right,
think by saying school property, we're covering any rooms, gymnasium, athletics, whatever. Any school property.
all right. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Beaver. Do we have any further discussion of that motion? Seeing none, I would call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to policy 6.204, and I will turn that over to Dr. Woodard.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
Distinguished board members, I have prepared for you a revised copy of the initial proposal that we discussed at our last meeting. We took some time at your request to go back and look at this proposal and to look at fees assessed. On page 1 of this, you will see a comparison of what the tuition and fees are for Murray County compared to other counties. We compared about 9, 10 other counties and looked at what they were charging. We also looked at their enrollment sizes and the size of their districts. And if you look at page 2, I want to refer you to page 2. If you turn with me to page 2, this is where we get a little more specific. I'll kind of go through this and then I'll make a recommendation at the end of this. At your request, we went back and we looked at the median home listing price here in Murray County, and we found that that was around $219,000. I spent some time in conversation with the property assessor this week and spent some time with the Murray County Alliance to get this information. And then we looked at the median home value. The median home value in our county is about $143,975. And so when we look at our tax base, what we base the average person pays, and this is the average person, some people pay more, some pay less based on the size of your property, but the average person in Murray County pays $1,011.42, and that money goes to support our public education system. And so when we looked at our tuition, ironically, we were actually right in line. We were charging $1,000, but as you all know, we never knew the rhyme or reason as for why we were charging $1,000. It just kind of existed. It was also not in our policy, so we wanted to make you aware of that at our last meeting, that we didn't have something on the books, and that we wanted to make sure that what we were going to charge in the future would be fair, reasonable, and something that was equitable for the citizens who may choose to come into our county from somewhere else. So we also did our research, and I want to thank Scott Gaines for assisting me with this project. There are laws in the books, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. There was a law in the books that kind of gave us a formula. The formula for this is as follows. The formula for this says that you must take your local revenue and divide your local revenue by your ADA amount, and that will give you the maximum amount that you can charge for tuition in your county. And when we did that, we took $33,652,562 and divided that by our ADA amount at the ending year. It must be based on your the previous year, and we closed the year out at an ADA of 11,278, and so that gave us 2983. That is the top end number that we could use for tuition. The bottom end, of course, would be 1,000. That's what we charge, or it could be 0, whatever we decide. But the top end, it could be no more than $29.83. So my recommendation, looking at where we're going, if the average citizen pays $1,000, $1,011 roughly, in terms of their contribution based on property taxes, we felt like $1,850 would be appropriate, and here's why. That would give us, if we're looking at a person coming across county lines, it would give us the amount that the average citizen in Maury County pays on top of the price that we're going to be paying for every student who gets a computer in Maury County. The cost per computer right now, if I'm not mistaken, Stan, is about $650. That's about right. Mm-hmm. It was about $650, and then we thought about $200 additional for just debt service. When you have more kids in a school, that's more paper, that's more copies, that's more pencils, that's more wear and tear on the building. And so we thought about $200 additional for debt service. And so our recommendation would be that we move the tuition cost to $1,850, and that will be for the year. Any questions?
I would just say, Dr. Woodard, I appreciate you bringing this back. I know I was one of the ones that was critical of it the last time around, and I'm happy to
Yes.
see that you guys put some good thought into this, and I think it's a good starting point. The only thing I would say moving forward, just, obviously, let's reevaluate it next year and make sure it looks right. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing this back. That looks like some good information to help us know kind of where we need to be. Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I think with the policy itself, it says that the board has to approve that rate, correct, as far as the tuition? So do you need I guess you would need a motion from us to approve it at that recommended amount. Otherwise, though, we want to keep it out of the policy itself, I think. Or do we need to have it added in policy, do you think?
If you did decide to add it, of course, it would not be effective until July 1.
Right, next
For
year.
next school year. So
Okay.
you would have to put something effective July 1 if you wanted to put it in the policy.
And I think that will be appropriate.
Okay. Do we have a preference from the committee as to whether or not it's added into policy, or if we just want to have a motion to recommend it out of committee?
Would this be in effect immediately, or?
No, ma'am, it will be effective July 1.
Mr. Atkinson?
Well, it states in the policy here, they must be paid the tuition fee established by the board. I don't think it needs to be in the policy itself, how much the amount is. As long as we get that statement in there, I think we're covered.
Right, right. I would say, even though we have it in there that way, we've been on the board for, some of us have been on the board for 2 years, and we didn't know what the amount was or why it was what it was. So I certainly appreciate Dr. Woodard doing, and Mr. Gaines doing that homework and helping to give us a good foundation for why we would make this recommendation. Mr. Pennings?
Well, if we're not going to have the amount in the policy, where can an out-of-county person go besides calling your office? Where is it? Is it on the net so people can go and look at it when they pull up Maury County schools? It should be somewhere where the public has easy access to it.
That's what's been happening. People will call the pupil services department and ask what the cost is. That's how it's been happening, since it's not in writing.
If we spend all that money for a webpage, I think it would kind of make sense to have it on the webpage too. Just a suggestion.
Do we have a motion to approve the recommendation from Dr. Woodard's office to set our out-of-county tuition at $1,850? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Let me clarify, too. That's $1,850.
Correct.
Sorry, that's shorthand. So we have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that will be the recommendation of this committee. Thank you, Dr. Woodard. And I don't know if you want to speak on the next one, too. It's on the school attendance zones. And This got
Sure.
tabled from October as well, and I will say, I think part of, because we were talking about out of county, we also started to look at, what our out of zone rates were. And I'm not sure if you want to speak to, what we're looking at in the future. It seems like with some of the initiatives that we have, that we might be seeing more of that and how that would impact us. And if we need to possibly consider adjusting this policy to allow more open zone options.
Yes, I'll say a couple words. This is an exciting time for our county. I think that once we fully launch this one-to-one initiative across the county with every school, I think that we're going to be, very competitive with some of the larger school districts. I think that Murray County is the right size. We got the right location, and one thing that's important to note is that many of the people that do come across county lines that want to have their children here, many of them work at GM, so they're working here in our county. This is where they can find jobs, which will make us attractive. And we think that if their kids come here and go to school here and they like the schools here, eventually maybe we can, get those parents to maybe want to move here. But this is the place where people are finding economic opportunity in comparison to the counties that are around us. Some of the smaller counties are not having the economic growth that we're having. And so it's really, we're starting to, feel some boom. So the county is growing, and that's always a good sign. There's been discussion about, building new schools and expanding, and we think that we're dead on. We are working with Dr. Register on the 10-year growth plan for the county, because we think in 10 years, there'll be a definite need to think about what we're going to do with the condition of some of our schools. We have some schools that are aging quickly, and again, with so many kids in our schools and the wear and tear the kids will put in the building, that's a concern. And I think the next thing we have to think about is school choice. What do we want to do? Do we want to allow parents to go across the lines in terms of within the county and maybe look at a school choice option or not? So I think that conversation is coming. And so probably not appropriate for tonight, but I think coming soon, we do need to address school choice. Do we want parents to be able to choose the school that they feel has the best programs that meet the needs and interests of their children? And we have to think about how we do that and create a sense of equity and fairness in doing that, so that, people are not cherry picking just the schools that they think are the best, but really about what program needs are in the schools. So I think that conversation is one that's coming. In the coming weeks and months, Dr. Marzak and the executive team will be having that discussion, and hopefully I'll come back to you soon with some recommendations and with some ideas that other districts have used to move in that direction. So I look forward to sharing that with you at a more appropriate time. Thanks.
I think, in fact, at the beginning of the school year, we did do some experimenting with allowing schools to allow some out of zones to a certain percentage. I think this year, one of the options we may look at is look more specifically at what is the number of kids maybe that a certain school could allow, and maybe only allow that number. There's just some things we're throwing around just to think about, to say, maybe Woodard can only take 20 kids, and kind of look at the zone, look at what possibility the kindergarten or new enrollment might be, and maybe just limit that number rather than having a blanket percentage, so that we could be a little more tighter on. Of course, it would just be, I guess that might be first come, first serve, but we're just trying to look at certain options to certainly pay attention to filling up a school and not being able to do that, being able to, be open to, if a school happens to, we know that it might fill up during the school year, maybe limiting that number, maybe it not being a percentage, maybe just being a number. And at other schools, maybe, because they are a little bit empty, allowing some, a little larger number. But, it's just something we're thinking about as we talk about this zone and what we're doing with the buildings.
I was just going to say, I think definitely this is, and I appreciate you bringing this back to us on the, I would encourage us to look at this. I think it is a pretty big change that has a lot of moving pieces to it, but I think once we get the 10-year assessment back that tells us kind of what we want to do, and as we decide how to apply that, this may be a piece of that we would want to consider, but I would definitely think we would need a whole lot of information to come with it on on what it would mean, because I could see this having some impacts in about a dozen ways off the top of my head, and if those are the ones I just thought of,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sure there's 3 dozen more that we'd need to explore, so, but I definitely think it's probably coming in a few months as we get that report back.
We know we have out-of-county students. Our policy allows that. We know we have out-of-zone students attending different schools in our county. Which student has priority?
The student that is in county.
Okay. Because, I mean, if we allow out-of-county students to attend, they're mostly going to probably attend the outlying schools more so, but also some of our outlying schools, Mount Pleasant in particular, has the arts program. So I want to make sure that the in-county people have first opted any seats at Mount Pleasant if they want to transfer there for the arts program.
Yes, sir. We have been accepting kids based upon seat availability, and that starts with an in-county preference first. And then people who want to apply out of county also can apply after the deadline. That's the way it was done. Just before I accepted the position, that's the way it had been done. I think that's a good process. It's a fair process.
While we're looking at out-of-zone students, what are we going to do if since I use Mount Pleasant, let's go ahead and continue to use Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant's arts program is so successful that we have a waiting list from all of our schools in the county. What precedent or procedures are we going to use as far as picking which students, fairly picking which students are able, given the opportunity to go to Mount Pleasant?
I think in a situation like that, we'd have to do a lottery system. You know, I think once Mr. Gaines and I had discussed maybe increasing seat capacity from 5% to 10%. I think we took 5% this year in the first year, maybe increasing it from 5% to 10%. And then, you know, so maybe we would keep 5%. This is just an idea, but maybe keep 5% and then do a lottery drawing for the other 5%. I think that's probably about the fairest way you could look at something like this, so that, you know, people got in based on, you know, a randomization, as opposed to principals being allowed to cherry pick.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know I'm trying to be right in there with Dr. Marzak and his goals and his beliefs that as he improves programs and we add specific things such as the arts at Mount Pleasant, and then Hampshire having the agricultural program with UT and other things that are coming, that we may have people from all over wanting to go out of zone to specific schools depending on what their child's interest is. And I want to make sure that the system we have is fair to everybody throughout the county, and that we're not only taking students from one school and giving them first priority.
Yes, sir. Well noted. Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Dr. Woodard or Mr. Gaines on this topic? Sounds like we'll be seeing some more of that maybe in the coming months. All right, now the bulk of our material, and what we have in Section C, as y'all will recall, we contracted with TSBA and signed up for their subscription service for them to review our policy manual. They did a thorough review of all the sections of our policy manual, but we have not gone through and adopted all of those recommendations. So we are starting that process. Tonight's the first night, and Amanda gets to be the guinea pig on that. But luckily, I think she's a good person to be the guinea pig on this, since she pretty much knows our policies backwards and forwards. And staff is in the process of working through policies as well to make sure that it's consistent with, you know, what is actually being done. And as I'd indicated before, if there are any board members that want to work with staff on any specific policy section, you know, you should have, in previous policy agendas, I think last month actually, You should have seen who is going to be responsible for each section, so you're welcome to reach out to those central office staff and, provide some feedback if you would like, or meet with them. I'm sure they would be open to that. I know I've reached out on some, and they've been very receptive. So I would just encourage all of our board members, if there's something that's a particular interest, please reach out. But at the same time, policy is how we speak. I think we want our policies to be fair, and we want them to be representative of how things are actually done in our system. So this is kind of that effort to take a second look. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Amanda, and she can tell us what we've got in front of us.
The easiest way to do this, you all will have in front of you a spreadsheet. It's 4 pages. In that spreadsheet, each policy is listed. It shows not only the TSBA recommended policy, but also the current policy that we had. If there were changes made, those are in red under the explanation and notes. Anything you see in green, that was basically TSB saying your current policy is fine, we're just going to format it to our format. And then you will see in gray policies they recommended for deletion and why. Most of those were just that we had 2 policies that basically said the same thing. And then in orange, you will see any new policies that TSB has recommended for us to have.
And I'm passing down the spreadsheet that Amanda is talking about is the first 2 pages look like this. And then the 3rd page, I believe, is where the spreadsheet starts, where you can see the explanation and the notes for each of the policies. So you can see from our current policies what has been reviewed, what has been deleted, why it's been deleted, and then what has been added. If it's been added, it'll be in orange.
And if there were any current updates, we passed several policies about, with the MOU, the language that we wanted in those, that was added to this section. So anything that was updated, those have been added to the TSBA policies. And then also, there's a typo on 5.106. It says that we have a 900-day probationary period. We might want that, but we don't have that. We have a 90-day probationary period. So I have went through and fixed that. And then also 5.104, the language in that's our equal opportunity employment language. We wanted to make that more encompassing, and so Ms. Parker actually suggested some language to put in that, and that should be in your packet in the hard copy. That language is in red. Well, it may not be in red on your copies, but it's line 5, 6, and 7.
Mr. Pennings?
Well, I just want to make sure, because I see everything we have here, and I notice a lot of changes that we changed up the words director to superintendent.
They're
Because
gonna
my
do a
meaning,
mass.
my reason for that is because last week, we voted on a new extended contract, and the language in our packet was for the director of schools. And that's what the contract wording was, the director of schools. We no longer have a director of schools, we have a superintendent. And all the paperwork we get should mirror the fact that we do not have a director.
Right, and TSBA says once we adopt these policies and they go online, because they will be housed online on the TSBA site, they're going to do a mass change. So all the directors of schools will be changed to superintendent.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that, but we have to make sure all the paperwork we receive, including things like the contract, to say superintendent, not director.
Mr. Moore?
I mean, just to clarify that, does that mean if this were to be a motion to approve all of these, we should make that motion with the understanding that this is going to be changed, that language?
You can, yes.
Okay.
Are there any specific policies that we want to pull out and look at it in more detail, or anything that you have questions about? I know as I was going through it, I tried to email Miss Alexander language that I thought might be appropriate, or if I had a question, clarify some things, and she was, got back to me right away with those answers. So I'm not going to go through those with y'all, because I was comfortable with the policy once I heard it. But I think if y'all have any questions, now would be a good time for us to go through those. Do we have any motions, or do we want to, do we not feel, we're not ready to move forward on it? Mr. Atkinson?
Once all this goes through, well, what I'm trying to say is, once it goes before the full board to be approved, all this will be dressed up and everything's cleaned
Yes,
and ready for approval, right?
yes.
We're moving to, or we could move to accept the changes that have been proposed by our personnel office to be posted, to recommend for posting. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second from Ms. Morency. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. Those policies will all be recommended for posting. Mr. Bates?
I would just reiterate to the public that this will be posted and be online for public review for a full 30 days before we'll give final approval. I know this is a lot of changes, so I guess to the extent we can, I would invite the public to take a look at it, and if they have any questions, they should contact us. So.
I think the important thing to remember, too, is that we're trying to make these policies mirror what we are actually doing and make sure they're reflective of what is actually occurring in our system. So I think we want to make sure that, we're following those policies as we've seen on multiple occasions. We want to make sure that everything's being done, I's are being dotted and T's are being crossed. And I will say that starting with this section, I feel very confident that Ms. Alexander, Ms. Hargrove, and her department are dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's. So I think this is a good section for us to start with, and I have a lot of confidence moving forward with these policies. That being said, that was our last item. So do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. All right. We are adjourned.
Okay, you guys be gentle with me. The call to order the Community Relations Committee agenda, for November 3rd. I want to welcome everybody, and it should be a short meeting. Roll call, Chair Powers is not here. Kristen Parker, Jim Pennings, Joanna Martin, Thomas Dudley. Also in attendance are Ms. Kinzer, Mr. Moore, Mr. Atkinson, Mr. Bates, and Mr. Beaver. You have the agenda before you. I was asked to make an addition to the agenda before we vote on that. There was discussion at our retreat about inviting our county commissioners to visit Marvin Wright with us. And Ms. Powers asked that we add that to the agenda to discuss tonight. With that addition, do I have someone to, Ms. Parker? Thank you very much. And second? Mr. Pennings? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. You have before you the minutes of our last meeting, the October meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Pennings, second. Ms. Parker? All in favor? Any opposed? Moving on down to other business. The main business we had was the Christmas parade float. Columbia's Christmas parade is Monday, December 5th. Mount Pleasant and Spring Hill are both on Saturday, December 3rd. So Ms. Powers and I have talked a little bit about what we thought we could do to make that work for everyone. It was, I guess, the whole float for the, we're going to divide it up into two. The whole float will do the Columbia Parade with a school bus pulling the trailer with the schoolhouse on it. And then for the Mount Pleasant and the Spring Hill Parade, we will divide that up. The Mount Pleasant parade would have the bus, and the Spring Hill would have the trailer with the schoolhouse pulled by a truck. That's how I understand. We have, and I think you have, the theme of the Columbia Parade is Babes in Toyland. The theme of the Mount Pleasant Parade is the Parade of Lights. And did you find out the theme for Spring Hill yet? Okay. Well, what we're thinking we can do is just combine all of them and do the, I think, is the box over there? Yeah. Did it disappear? We had some suggestions of having some kids dressed up with a box that says MCPS on it, and, pardon? It looks like a block. It was over there. Anyway, and then we had a suggestion for the school bus, and I don't have a picture of it, but we have a suggestion for the school bus to have reindeer ears on it? Antlers, sorry. Reindeer antlers on it, and a nose, a Rudolph nose. And Mr. Beaver has so kindly agreed to make those for us. So we're going to get together and get some specifics and what dates, but please put those dates down, and I think that this will be really good for us to let everybody know in all three cities that the school board is here and the school system is here, and we're interested in what's going on in all three cities. So, does anyone have any comments or ideas that they'd like to add to that? Do I need a vote on that? No, okay. The next thing was, Mr. Beaver and I went out, we took a trip out to Marvin Wright the other day, and I at least got a whole new view of what's needed out there and what's going on and how to address that. It kind of opened my eyes as to what's going on in that whole area. I hadn't been out there. And so in speaking with Miss Massey, she thought it would help to present this, some way to present to the commission, because we're asking them for a lot. And to present and invite them to take the tour with us and let her give them the tour and show just what is needed out there. So in speaking with Chair Powers, we came up with maybe just an idea to just get a school bus one day during lunch, or make some box lunches and invite all the commissioners that want to join us and go out there, set it up with Miss Massey to do a tour for everyone at the same time. So I'll entertain any discussion on that, or... Think it's a good idea? You think, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, oftentimes we assume that county commissioners know our needs. Sometimes I wonder if we even know our needs. And so I think trying to plan a trip and go up there and let them see the growth in the area, which is bringing the necessity of the classroom additions to us, but also see the current situation to show that irregardless of what the future brings, we've got a need now. And so I think it would be great. You know, I don't know what Dr. Marzak's plans last year in December, I think it was, we had the school tour for all of our schools. I don't know if we're going to try and have that again this year or not, but you know, if we're not going to do that, I'd like for us to at least try this, and then where we can let all the commissioners give them the opportunity to see what kind of conditions Miss Massey is already experiencing, and then maybe that will help make their mind up as far as funding for what our needs are.
Mr. Beaver?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
And going out to Marvin Wright, you know, it was an eye-opener, if nothing else, just the current location, how close the houses are, and the traffic situation. And I know there's a lot of questions about, you know, what needs to be done. But, you know, if we can show the county commissioners that, you know, hey, this is a problem we're faced with, whether they fund it or not, they will understand more about what we're talking about. And, you know, we might be able to work something where we get part of the money. I don't know what could be done, you know, but at least they'll understand the decisions that we're having to make. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Martin?
I was going to say her perspective, I think, would be more valuable than anything that a lot of outside people that make the decisions could give, and the voice that we have would, in my opinion, would be just a little bit less than what she may have to offer. So I think her perspective would be extremely valuable.
Thank you. If nothing else, they can see what a difficult this decision is, you know, that this decision is for us, and that if it's not funded, that the difficulty we're facing in coming up with another plan. So, do we need a motion to go forward with this?
I think last year when we did the 2x2, I think that was done at the superintendent's discretion. So
Okay.
I think we could informally take a vote if we wanted to, but I think it's certainly within his prerogative to schedule this with the commissioners, and hopefully we all will participate and attend. I would echo that I think it's a great idea for us all to go up there, and hopefully commissioners will feel the same, because we all, I think, have a common interest, but you know, how you get from point A to point B. There's lots of different ways to get there sometimes, and it would probably be beneficial for us all to go.
Mr. Bates?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, I mean, I think we could always just look at, and maybe just by common consensus, if that's the will of the committee, and could then get in contact with the director, that we'd ask that he try to coordinate something like that, and I'm sure he'd be glad to.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
I just want to echo that. I know, I think in my mind, I would rather leave it up to the director to use whatever means necessary, because my goal in something like this is I guess bigger than just the addition. I really want more people in our county that may not have daily exposure to that area to understand what's really going on there, because regardless of, it doesn't matter what we do about it, something's got to be done, and I think people need to see it with their own eyes to really understand it. I know I see it every day. Sometimes I'm used to it. I forget that if you're maybe in a part of the county and you're not frequenting an area that is that dense. I know we were out in the neighborhood behind that with my own children for Halloween night, and it literally looked like a street fair. There was that many people walking around. So it is, again, some people may not be used to that. There's other parts of our county where people may live a mile from each other, you know, and that's the closest house. So some perspective is always a good thing for all of us as a board as well as the county commission to understand kind of what's going on there.
Mr. Bates?
Mr. Dudley.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Dudley. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to make one suggestion while we're talking about this. I know Ms. Donna had mentioned that thought maybe we'd do this around lunch. Can we videotape, and I know part of our issue up there is traffic. Do we have the capabilities of videotaping, somebody videotaping either morning or afternoon, whichever's worse, the traffic congestion and stuff, where we can show the commissioners what everything looks like at that time frame, because that's one small segment of this, but I'd like for them to see that not only the classroom edition is important, but the loop road also. So, you know, I'd like for them to see that. I don't want to worsen the problem by us trying to be there at one of these traffic jams, but you know, just something where we can show them this is why we have the concerns about the need for the loop road.
Mr. Breeden?
Yeah, just to respond to that, we have, and I don't know that we've actually, it might have been appropriate to have had this ready when we talked about, well, when you all talked about at the meeting last week. We have done some aerial photographs using one of our students who has a drone of the area to show the growth in the area. However, we've had to do that. We did that in a time when he was not in school. I'm not sure if we could get him and his drone up there during a traffic time or not, because he is one of our students. Maybe we should talk to his principal, Mr. White, and see if we could get out of school to go do that. So, you know, that'd be most effective if we could do it from an aerial perspective. We might could do something, you know, just with a videotape from somebody from our tech department, just from a street level video to do that. We can pursue that and see what we could get done.
Okay. Mr. Bates?
I was just going to say, I think it is a good idea if we could get them out there, because I remember watching the video, you know, with the drone, and that was pretty impressive, but sometimes being there on the ground speaks so much volume. I mean, it's a three-dimensional type viewing, and I know that I went out there to look at it myself, and it's pretty astounding. When you take in the entire environment, all the senses, and I was out there and there was blasting going on, and apartment complexes being built, and you can hear all the hammering and stuff like that, and just that full perception of everything speaks volumes. So I think it would be very helpful for people to see that. But
Well,
the need is real out there.
And in talking to Ms. Massey, she recommended that we come during the day when kids are there and people can actually see what's going on in the school rather than after school or, you know, after work. That when it's in full bloom, I guess, is when she suggested that we come. And that's why we chose maybe lunchtime. We can get as many people as we possibly can. Mr. Pennings? Mr. Pennings?
I think it's a better idea to have Stan try and get some more videotaping with that student if possible, and to also do some in school, and then ask the commission for the time to make a small presentation at the time of a county commissioner meeting, because that's when you're going to get all the commissioners there. And 2 and 2 last year, I mean, all of us that were there, and I know commissioners are busy just like we are. Neither one of my commissioners showed up. I took a tour of Central High School, which I knew very well, with one sweet young lady. You know, that was it. I think if we presented at the county commission meeting a whole video picture in and out of school, it would be more beneficial to us than trying to get a busload of county commissioners out there.
Anyone?
Well, the thing about video, unless Hillary films it, I mean, we can show it multiple times. So, you know, we could show it to the ones that come on the tour as well as at the county commission meeting, or to any of our constituents. I mean, it's something we might use to some of our civic organizations and to the Alliance to help get them in support of the expansion there. So we can show any of these videos showing the need to any number of groups.
Okay, I would like to get a general consensus from the committee on planning, or going to Dr. Marzak and making the suggestion to him and let him go with it. The visit to Marvin Wright, and also filming in the problems, some of the problems that they have, in order to present to the county commission. So I guess just a general yes, if you're in favor of doing this.
Yes.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. With that said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Mr. Dudley, second? Mr. Pennings. Okay, committee meeting is adjourned. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you.
I do have it, and I was going to ask anybody, if y'all don't want to, if y'all want to go ahead and keep moving with the zoning facilities, we can just keep going.
Sorry.
And we're up here ready to go, Stan.
I was just glad to get done.
Let's do, is 5 minutes okay? So we will start,
No,
We'll start at
I do them all
7:05.
the time, but I don't do them up here.
We got you water, David.
Right. Yeah, when we talk to Chris, and we talk about this, we'll list all of the problems that she's having, and then get that on film. I think that'd be the right way to do it. So, starting with traffic in the morning, lunchtime, the closet where they have.
So I was told 7 or 7:15.
We actually went through really quickly tonight, I don't know
Well,
why.
apparently it wasn't you that went through quickly, it was policy.
Yes. So, what do you need from me?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
No, I guess I'll just drive home.
I'm sorry.
I got a question for you. What would it take to get a badge made?
Sorry?
What would it take to get a new badge made?
Amanda's department would know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, marketing doesn't do that, HR.
Okay.
Employees.
I was thinking you did my last one.
No, employee. Yeah, human resources who does that. Yeah.
What we talked about was
Yes.
mostly the Christmas parade.
Sure, right.
And that we're gonna do the school bus, and
Okay, yes.
Denny's-
That's for Columbia. Hey, Tommy. That's for Columbia, is gonna be the whole schmear, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
Jenny's gonna do the antlers for the school bus with the Rudolph nose, and then we'll have the trailer pulling the schoolhouse, and
Okay.
we're going to do the Babes in Toyland.
Okay.
Then when we split up, we'll have a truck that's pulling the.
When you say when we split up, you mean for the other
Mount-
two parades?
Well, and actually, that's before. They're both before. They're on
Right.
the third.
Yes,
So
yes,
Mount
yes.
Pleasant will have the school bus.
Yes, okay.
And their theme is Parade of Lights, so we'll put lights on the school bus. And,
Fantastic.
And then the Spring Hill will have the truck pulling the schoolhouse.
Okay.
And I don't know what
You know,
their.
Carrie had raised her hand and said, I can lead Columbia, kind of try to get that organized. I mean, clearly, it's an effort from everyone.
Right,
For
right.
sure, for sure. But she had said, Columbia, I feel like, she knows Christy Martin
Right.
well. She really needed somebody to raise their hand and say, I'll be sort of just the point person, the lead person for Mount Pleasant, and the same for Spring Hill. I need somebody to raise their hand and say, I'll kind of be the lead person for it.
Okay, well.
Did we do that?
We did, I'm the lead person for
Mount Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant.
Okay,